everyone. It's Katie and Mike again. Say hi.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. And we are back for episode 6 of Agent Carter, which is A Sin to Air. It's obviously the plot is thickening and things are changing and yeah.
Things are moving.
Yeah, it's clearly moving towards because we got 2 episodes left, so it's moving towards the finale into the climax. Yeah, there were a lot of game changers in this episode, and there were a lot of things, there were some good, I don't want to say twists, but there was some good kind of swerving that you wouldn't expect in the plot, and I thought that they did a nice job of doing that and not having them all be really easy to catch necessarily.
Yeah.
Let's go. Well, the first thing is that the doctor from last episode, which I believe you said that you thought he had, that he was still working for Leviathan, correct?
Yes. I pointed out in the last episode that he was some kind of double mole implant thing, and he's obviously on the take of Leviathan.
And
I think works well into a Hydra name.
I still don't think that it's even connected to Hydra. That's just how I feel about it. And I think it works better that way. But turns out that Mike was at least right about the double mole thing. The doctor infiltrates the SSR office. He becomes kind of friendly with their boss, and he nearly hypnotizes him into doing stuff until Sousa comes in with the news about Peggy being a traitor. I thought that it was really well done because you see Dottie take down the office across the way from their building, and she's using a gun, and she's using the scope of the gun, and you think she's aiming it at this doctor who's giving his testimony, and it's pretty convincing.
And you think she's going to shoot him.
Yeah, you think she's going to shoot him. Instead, she's sending him light signals, and he made sure to open the window specifically so that he could communicate with her through taps. And I thought that was really well done, because it makes sense that she would use a scope like that in order to see and to, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it also, it makes you think that he's going to die, and that she's, taking him down. And then it turns out, no, he's actually working. Like I said, it was just really well done. It was one of several scenes in this episode that was really well executed, both from a writing standpoint and visually.
Yeah, there's some really great scenes in this episode. Really great moments, really great fights. If I have one criticism for this episode, it's that going between these 2 episodes, the previous one and this one, it kind of feels like Sousa sits on the information that Peggy's a traitor. And I kind of think that she should have started being on the run at the end of last week's episode, and then we catch up with her on the run in this week's episode. Because it feels like she fights her way through her stuff, but she's only on the run for about 20 minutes. And that doesn't feel very long.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know if Sousa finds anything else to absolutely confirm, or if he just hesitated in sharing the information.
I know. I kind of get Sousa hesitating because it's Peggy, but I kind of wish that her being outed was the end of last week's episode.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I also don't mind the fact that, sorry, my nose is so itchy.
Because then you can end on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, but I don't mind the fact that she got taken in kind of quick. Because I was worried that it was going to be just like a cat and mouse thing throughout the whole episode, and it felt like it was speedier than that, and I didn't mind that as much. Alright, so first of all, she does some investigating, because she figures out that whoever took Stark's information for his vault was a woman. And so she starts looking into the various women, just in New York, who were involved with Stark in the last 6 months. there are a lot, which goes into this nice little montage of her and Jarvis investigating, and Jarvis not being thrilled about seeing these women again because he was the one who had to basically be the messenger. Yeah, man, he has had to do a lot of stuff for Howard Stark in the past. But yeah, he's very nervous around these women, and it highly implies that Ginger Rogers scared the crap out of him when Howard broke up with her, which was a great moment where he was like, don't, because she was crossing off all the people who were clearly actresses and famous people and probably couldn't get away with being super spies.
Super Russian super spy.
Yeah, exactly. And then he goes, I don't know about that one. And she goes, you think Ginger Rogers is
a Russian sleeper agent.
Yeah, and he's like, you didn't see her eyes. Her eyes were like the pit of despair. That was a really great moment. But there was a lot of Peggy Jarvis shenanigans going on this episode. And I mean, I haven't heard anybody complain about Jarvis getting slapped, because I know a lot of times when women hit men in shows and movies, there is some talk of like, well, would you think it was funny if a male character hit a female character? In this case, I don't know. I still found it pretty enjoyable, only because he was obviously bracing for the rage of these women because he's already experienced it before. And also Peggy's shocked reaction was pretty damn good.
Peggy does block a few of them.
Yeah, she does figure it out after a while. And then the woman ends up kicking him in the shin instead. And then it leads into the scene in the diner where Jarvis and Peggy are still talking, and Peggy realizes that the only people left in the diner are a handful of agents that she recognizes, and that they're clearly going to try to take her down. Which leads into my favorite scene of the whole show so far, which is this big fight scene where it's just her and Jarvis is mostly holding down the door duties. He does knock out 2 people, but Peggy does the majority of this like great brawl, and it has jazz music behind it, and it's really well choreographed, and the cinematography is like really fun. And I just love everything about that scene. It's everything I wanted. I'm so happy with it.
Clubbing guys with her fists.
Yeah, it's so good. And it really, again, it highlights her style of fighting, which is very brawler. And God, I love that scene. It's a great scene. And then, of course, later her boss is like, how could a woman take down all of these agents? I'm like, because she's an agent, you asshat. I'm sorry that you haven't been using her to her full potential, so you don't know how good of a fighter she is, but she's a good fighter.
Notice, she hung out with Steve Rogers, and Steve Rogers found her to be a capable fighter.
Yeah. It was like the first thing he liked about her was that she was really, really okay with punching jerks. It was such a good scene. Speaking of the diner, it's not an important scene per se, but there's a bit where Angie does this little monologue in the diner, and one of the other customers says something really nice to her, and Peggy also says, like, don't give up on your acting, because she's getting restless. And interestingly, I didn't catch it when I watched it, but someone pointed out to me that the monologue she does is actually from A Doll's House, which is I want to say 1800s, like late 1800s play, but it's specifically about gender relationship and obligations of women in marriage and toxic relationships and like infantilizing, treating women like objects and like infants and like really and like children. It's a really good it's a really interesting play, and it just ties in really well. It was clearly a specific choice by the writers to have her use that monologue in the scene because it ties into everything with the show. So I thought that was cool.
Yes, good choice. Also was a good choice to have Peggy win the brawl.
Well, of course. What else were you expecting? Yeah, the only reason, and that kind of goes into the later part where I was really happy that she didn't get taken out by her own incompetence or even by her co-workers doing stuff well. She got taken out pretty much because, one, she underestimated Dottie, and then the guys just happened to be lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time to see her collapse on the floor.
I don't think they saw her collapse. I think
but collapsed.
Yeah.
Like, she was already collapsed.
They came in moments after she had already been knocked out by Dottie.
Yeah, so it just happened to be lucky that they caught her, and it wasn't like it was anything particularly to blame. Like, Peggy's not to blame for her being taken in necessarily. And you could blame her for Dottie, but, you know, Dottie's also, like, has taken down everyone who's come in her path, so you can't blame Peggy for not seeing that coming. Even though now that she's alive and she knows what Dottie did, like, the lack of, like, Dottie's not going to be able to hide in the shadows much anymore, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of her greatest strengths taken away, and I think Dottie knew that at the end of the episode. The other thing, like, there's some really great moments throughout this whole episode, and I really did love it. I know it was over the top, but I did love Angie using the men's uncomfortableness with female emotion against them, and helping out her friend. And I like the implication, or the hint that Angie had, like, at least some idea that Peggy was doing something
not working
serious.
at the phone company.
Yeah, but she says, like, I knew you weren't working at the phone company. So it's kind of nice to know that she wasn't completely fooled by this ruse. Although,
Peggy wasn't exactly the best secret keeper.
no, she really wasn't. But I did also enjoy that their not landlord, what is it, the matron of the apartment complex was like, those girls at the phone company. I'm like, what stereotypes do you have for girls at the phone company? They're always murdering people and betraying their country, also being sluts. Like that, I think the third one was more the implication, but there's just like, how many problems have you had with phone women? Anyway.
I think there were actually none, and she's just rattling off lines.
No, I think that she has very specific, like, prejudices against certain women that come through her door.
That's very true, probably.
So it was a really good episode. We got to see Thompson get punched in the face.
So that makes it a better episode.
That makes it so good. I mean, granted, I don't think he's been redeemed. I think he had some redemption last episode, and I think even with this one, he's not so smug about it. He seemed to be genuinely, like not as frustrated as Sousa.
He was the one that ends up at the back door. He knows Peggy is crafty.
Yeah,
he respects Peggy a little bit more now. You can tell that because he's at the back door waiting for her.
Yeah, and like I said, he's not smug about capturing her by any means. Like, he's almost sad about it. Like, he doesn't have that same level as Sousa, who really does feel betrayed by someone he felt was a confidant at his work. But Thompson does have this, like, first of all, he does tell the extra agents, like, they said they didn't think that you'd be able to take them. I knew better. So I think there is that level of, there's not that smug, arrogant jack off that he was just like 2 episodes ago. But it was still fairly satisfying to see him get punched in the face and see him be taken completely by surprise by how effortlessly she takes him down. You know what I mean?
Well, he does make the mistake of taking him with his ranged weapon advantage and then walking towards her.
Yeah, not a smart move, buddy. Besides that, we did get another agent, this time a white guy, and he does die again. With the doctor using the hypnosis. That was a brutal death.
Yeah, one thing with the doctor, I wanted to look up and try and figure out who he is.
There was another doctor character that they think he might be, but it doesn't quite sync up. And I think that might have been because they wanted it to be a surprise that he was still working for Leviathan, so they didn't want to necessarily
be exact.
Yeah, exactly, and have people Google it and then figure out right away, oh, this is actually a bad guy.
Yeah,
you know?
but it was, to me, it was very obvious that he was, because I mean,
I just thought they could go either way. I didn't think that there was that it was definitely going to happen.
they were led there by the typewriter.
Yeah, I do think that that's true. There was no other reason, and it actually kind of makes it's kind of clever, even though he could have easily have been shot at any point in that episode. But it is kind of clever that they basically use the SSR to get one of their operatives into the country. So good job, SSR. I also thought it was interesting that when he tells the guy to kill himself, when he instructs the guys to kill himself, he actually tells him to pour bourbon, whereas bourbon was the thing that that Dum Dum had given him last week. So I thought that that was an interesting connection, that like he had him drink the American alcohol that the Americans gave him, and then walk right into traffic. Which again, man, that death was like, I don't know if I gasped, but I was pretty like, that was pretty shocking. And thank God
I wasn't surprised by it, but it did look like he was like a rag doll that got hit by a truck.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm just surprised that they showed it, and that they showed it like they didn't like cut away. Yeah. So yeah, no, I really liked a lot of this episode. I wouldn't say it's necessarily my favorite, because like it's just a lot of interesting stuff that happens, but it also feels like it's tying into the larger stuff that I don't get to watch yet. I am really interested to see where Howard's going to come in on this, because they couldn't get a hold of Howard this episode, which makes me think that he is trying to do some stuff behind the scenes to make it up to Peggy. And I'm assuming that means founding S.H.I.E.L.D.
Could be. He could be picking up Dum Dum in a helicopter. Hey, you want to lead up a tire agency with me? I need an arms man.
I want all the Howling Commandos to just be a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. next season. Just let them all be.
They said if they get another season, they're going to use more Marvel characters this time around.
And I thought that was still the smartest thing they did with last episode, was setting up that there are more Howling Commandos that we saw in the first Captain America movie. Because then you can actually say, well, there aren't just like the
7 of them.
7 you saw in the movie, and then like the 3 other ones. You can actually expand it to like a plethora of different characters, and I know that there were quite a few in
comics.
In the comics. I'm not sure how old Samuel L. Jackson is, and how his Nick Fury, like what age he would, or what year he would be born in, but it'd be interesting to find a way to tie in something with him.
Yeah, but it's a long time.
Way. Yeah, I know.
You'd probably have to do a 70s.
Yeah.
To be honest. And
I'm hoping they stick with the 50s theme. The problem is still that there is a very big lack of diversity. And the fact that they don't mention the racism of the time, which was huge, and they don't bring up a lot of actual people of color, especially black people in New York, it's still the overwhelming problem of the show. Something I talked about on Tumblr today, and I tried to get a little bit of feedback from people who actually who are in film production, but there is a chance that the writers and the people who cast the extras didn't connect. And so, like, some of the problems I really do think are with the writing, the fact that the racism isn't at least brought up in the background. There were ways that they could have done that. And also the fact that the casting then has very few, like, I have to basically squint and look, and you might see, like, a black man walking down the street. You might see, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was, like, one of Howard Stark's ex-girlfriends was Asian American. But for the most part, there is just a predominantly like white New York that's being portrayed, and that's a problem. It's like the biggest problem that the show has. And so I'm hoping with season 2, I'm hoping that the writers, well, I understand.
I do think they take them out of New York in season 2. I would technically want them to go to DC. I think if they go to DC, they could maybe, 1, do better, but 2, I think going to DC and do a classic DC thing would be really cool.
But right, even with that,
New York, they're not really portraying classic New York. They're just sort of a street corner.
But with DC too, if they make an entirely white DC,
But yeah, you'd have the same problem.
I might just, like, scream. I might just have the first episode of season 2 just be me screaming into a pillow, because I'm just like, why? I mean, what I'm going to say, and we'll get into this with the other, I'm hoping that if we get a season 2, knock on wood, if we get a season 2, that they will actually bring in more women of color, either from the actual comics or just make new ones, because they made Angie, they made Dottie, they can make,
They've made
Coulson.
Ming Wei Wen.
Well,
right?
that's the actress. Melinda May is
Melinda May, yeah. But
yeah.
I was speaking of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
They're making characters there.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
They can do the same in their spin-off show.
And I still think it would be really clever if it's hard because I think there was a Japanese American agent and they didn't even mention the fact that he was Asian, he just was, which would be fine on a regular show, but you're talking about a show that's supposed to be set in an age where racism was considered normal. But it would be, I still say it'd be really interesting if Peggy chose for her first group of agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to include at least like a German American, or not, well, maybe a German American, but definitely a Japanese American, and have people protest it because there is still that anti-Japanese sentiment in America. It definitely was there in World War II, but I don't think it changed that much in the few years after the war. And I really feel like that would make a really big statement for her to go, no, this is the right person for the job. I don't care about your sentiments about the war. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think you can do that. If you do it enough, maybe you even have someone who Peggy recruits be a traitor. If you do it enough, like say you get 5 people.
Maybe, but I don't think that they would do that. I'm worried that they would do a little bit like the Howling Commandos where you have like one from each little diversity group. But I don't mind, but like, you know what I mean. Then,
yeah.
Which is the problem when you have one person representing a whole
race
group,
of
yeah,
or something.
A whole ethnicity, and then you have them be the bad guy. This is why having a lot of diversity helps with that. Like a lot of diversity in one project helps with that. But I still, alright, so going back to this episode, because we're going to talk more about the overall pros and cons of the show when we get to the finale. But for this episode, I thought it was really good. It does feel like, like it's not, it was a complete episode, but I do feel like it's indicative of the next.
Yeah, it's setting up everything for the next couple episodes.
So it was good, it just maybe wasn't my personal favorite. But
it's got some very
it has
high
some of my
highs.
favorite moments of the show so far. It just wasn't my favorite. So, do you have anything else to say?
I'm presuming if you watch these video recaps, you're already watching the show. But, so, what you should do is keep talking on Twitter and Facebook or wherever you go and keep telling people to watch this show because we want a season 2.
Yeah, definitely, and keep doing the social media stuff, and fingers crossed that we keep.
Because I think they're going to need some help to get a season 2.
I don't know. I'm going back and forth. At this point, like, all we can do is watch and talk about the show, which is what we're doing. So keep doing that, you guys, and we'll keep doing that, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.